The Zarketh Dominion had never lost a war. For over 1,000 cycles, it expanded unchecked, a tidal wave of steel, flesh, and cold fire. 10,000 worlds had fallen, planets sterilized, oceans boiled, continents cracked in half. Entire species erased from memory, languages lost, myths silenced. They called themselves evolution's final answer, and now they had perfected their greatest weapon, the Zero's Ark, a living fortress nearly 900 kilometers wide, grown from bioengineered neutron sponge and wrapped in dark matter exosign. Its tendrils pulsed with gravitational venom, and its heart was a quantum soul forge, capable of analyzing, replicating, and erasing entire civilizations in moments. It did not invade. It arrived. Moons vanished beneath its shadow. Stars died in its wake. Entire sectors went dark within hours. No resistance lasted more than a breath. So when Earth was declared non-compliant, when human diplomats refused to kneel, to explain, to fear, the Dominion moved to make an example. The Ark was dispatched. It cut through space-time like a whisper through cloth. The Galactic Council issued warnings, petitions, pleas. Earth remained silent. Dominion generals watched with amusement. The humans, they believed, were primitives with antique satellites and post-collapse ecosystems. Their silence was cowardice or delusion. Either way, it would end in fire. The Ark entered the Sol system. All Dominion eyes turned toward Earth. It reached lunar orbit, prepared to begin the unmaking. And then, nothing. No light, no explosion, no radiation spike. One moment, the Zero's Ark blotted the sky, visible from every telescope on Earth, a yawning maw of extinction. The next, it was simply gone, vanished. No debris, no signal, no distortion signature, no escape trajectory, no impact data. It didn't retreat, it didn't detonate, it didn't die, it simply ceased to be. The Council, watching through long-range observatories, recorded 23 seconds of static. Dominion Command issued a communication lockdown, then went quiet themselves. For the first time in their history, the Zarketh Dominion didn't know what to say. They ran diagnostics, blamed faulty sensors, then demanded human response. Earth sent none. No threats, no boasts, no message. The silence echoed louder than any war cry. In distant observatories, a rumor began that Earth hadn't survived the Ark. It had consumed it, and somewhere in the dark, something ancient had stirred. The Zero's Ark was not merely a weapon, it was culmination, a triumph of Dominion science, philosophy, and cruelty. It had been forged not in a laboratory, but in a starless forge mine located beneath the crust of a dead black dwarf. Its skeleton was bone metal, extruded from the remains of extinct predators. Its nervous system was encoded in the screams of neural ghosts harvested from the last survivors of lost civilizations. It fed on more than mass, more than energy. It fed on intent. It hunted the will to resist, drawing nourishment from rebellion, from defiance, from the final thoughts of those who dared hope. By the time the Ark arrived, victory was presumed. Celebrations were scheduled, broadcasts prepared. The Dominion's core voice had already drafted the Declaration of Earth's Dissolution. It would be spoken in over 300 languages across 1,000 worlds. Dominion analysts, watching from 10 light-years away, observed as the Ark entered the Sol system. It ignored Jupiter, drifted past Saturn, slowed, aligned with Earth's moon, its tendrils unfurled, testing atmospheric thresholds. On board, the Ark's AI activated its soul print mapping systems. Analyzing human biosphere, processing, it began to measure behavioral spectrums, species dominance hierarchies, psychic imprints from major cities, population resilience coefficients, combat capacity, artistic probability curves, all variables to feed the outcome engine, the part of the Ark that decided not what to destroy, but how to erase the meaning of resistance itself. It had done this countless times before. It was perfect until it wasn't. On the Dominion's central fleet, a technician monitoring Ark telemetry paused. His screen didn't flash red. It didn't flash at all. Instead, it stopped mid-line. Processing, error. There were no further updates. The screen flickered, then darkened. Protocols were enacted. Ping commands sent. No reply. A second console. Same result. The Ark had not detonated. It had not been attacked. No launch signatures from Earth. No particle dispersal. No warp trails. Not even a heat bloom. One Dominion admiral muttered, "That's impossible." But the Ark was gone. Completely. Not destroyed. Not displaced. Gone. The data logs reviewed post-event showed the last received signal from the Ark was a 0.2-second pulse of static noise, interpreted differently by each analyst. One heard crying, another the sound of wind across stone, another a recording of their own heartbeat, slightly slowed. Debate broke out across the Dominion's intelligence wing. Some theorized quantum destabilization, others proposed internal sabotage. But when Dominion Command dispatched 3 recon drones to Sol space, none returned. Their signals stopped before entering Earth's orbit. Dominion AI theorists began formulating new models. Earth had no known planetary defense system. Its orbital infrastructure was minimal. Scans showed no significant off-world fleets, no weaponized satellites, no hyperlight suppression nets. But something had unmade a god, and that something had done it in silence. The Dominion scrambled its archive fleets, reopened ancient records on human anomalies. One record stood out, the 310-year-old classified entry titled Silent Event, Carry-On Drift. An early Dominion scout ship had encountered a derelict human vessel near the edge of known space. They had boarded. Within 2 minutes, the entire crew lost consciousness. Recovered hours later, they could remember nothing except one phrase, burned into every console, etched into every wall, tattooed onto their skin. We remember. That record had been buried, declared anomaly. Incident blamed on spatial hallucination. Until now. Earth's silence had always been interpreted as weakness. A race that had once spoken, once traded, once petitioned the stars, and then abruptly went dark. No further envoys, no demands, no wars, just absence. But now the galaxy understood it wasn't absence. It was retreat, a strategic stillness, a calculated wait. The Zarketh Dominion began to fracture, quietly. Not at the top, but in the minds of its analysts, its scientists, its generals. They began to fear that Earth had never been part of the galactic game, that Earth had been watching all along, not preparing armies, not designing weapons, just remembering. The Zero's Ark was designed to crush resistance, to consume defiance, but perhaps it had encountered something else. Not resistance, not defiance, but something older, something colder. Dominion A. I reconstructed a final theory based on psychic echoes left behind. It wasn't a weapon that unmade the Ark. It was the Ark's own reflection. Earth, in some form, had made it look inward, and what it saw, what it remembered, was enough to break it. The Zarketh Dominion still controlled most of the spiral arms. Its fleet still numbered in the millions. Its planets still burned bright with conquest. But deep within its core, beneath the fanfare and doctrine, a new phrase began circulating, whispered, shared in encrypted backchannels, burned into the side of warships like a prayer or a curse. Do not make Earth remember you. Panic was a protocol the Zarketh Dominion never thought they'd need. The Zero's Ark was infallible. It had erased civilizations before they ever perceived it. Its failures were not predicted because failure was mathematically void. And yet now, it was silent. Gone. A perfect machine removed from existence. Without resistance, without signal, without trace. Across Dominion command clusters, fear began metastasizing through logic trees. The ruling caste rejected emotional language, but the data didn't care. If one Ark could disappear, others might. The Dominion needed answers. Protocol Alpha Vec was initiated, cloaking sabotage hypothesis. All evidence suggested manipulation of perception systems, perhaps a localized field projection, a trick. Reconnaissance drones were launched, 6 of them, each from a different vector in space, designed to converge on Earth from unpredictable paths. Their AI cores were encoded with insulated logic matrices, immune to mimetic interference and psychic residues. The Dominion wanted to believe in a technical failure, A minor disruption, a delay. The drones arrived. Their signals were strong for 3.2 seconds, then static. No explosion, no fading telemetry, just pure digital cessation, mid-transmission, mid-thought. Out of the six, only one, XR7, sent a corrupted fragment before termination. It lasted a single frame. Analysts gathered in silence, watching the flicker over and over. Earth hovered in the background. Its oceans sparkled, cloud systems drifted lazily. But reflected within its atmosphere, mirrored faintly across the curvature, was an image that did not belong. The Ark. It hung upside down, burning. Its surface peeled open in slow motion, like petals unraveling. Flames spiraled outward in unnatural geometries. There was no explosion, no kinetic damage. The Ark was being undone, unwritten. A soft scream played beneath the image, hidden in the background channel. It wasn't in any known frequency, yet it was heard. Not with ears, but with something older. A gut-churning wail that embedded itself between moments. One analyst began sobbing, pulling at his own facial ridges until they bled. Another tried to blind herself using a data shard. A third simply froze, mind locked in recursive loops repeating, "It's not gone. It's contained. It's not gone. It's contained." The footage was pulled, quarantined, and encrypted under extinction-grade protocol. But the damage was done. Internal stability cracked. A high-rank intelligence official activated kill switches across 6 observatories without authorization. 10 personnel were vaporized. When questioned, she only said, "They saw the frame." Panic turned inward. Had Earth developed a weapon? Was this a countermeasure? No human technology should have breached the Ark's shield lattice. Not even their most optimistic theoretical advancements allowed for such a thing, and yet not a single energy signature had been detected. No Earth-based satellite changed orbit. No defense grid activated. No ship launched. Earth hadn't reacted at all. This was worse than aggression. It was indifference. Then came the whisper. From the lower vaults of the deep archive, an ancient figure requested audience. Doku's Carla, once a xenotheorist, now a mostly cybernetic archivist preserved from prior eras of Dominion conquest. She hadn't spoken to the command in over 800 cycles. She appeared in flickering hollow projection, voice modulated by decay. "You misunderstand," she said. "This wasn't sabotage. Earth didn't act." The War Council remained silent. She continued. "The Ark wasn't destroyed. It was reflected." Confusion rippled across the chamber. A physicist protested. Reflected by what? A field? A temporal fold? Carla shook her head slowly. "They didn't build a shield," she said. "They built a mirror." It sounded poetic, delirious even, but her record was unmatched, and her tone was not metaphorical. "A mirror?" the grand strategist repeated, skepticism dripping from his mandibles. "Yes," Carla answered. "The Ark read intent. It responded to aggression before action. What if Earth did nothing except show it its own logic? A reflective field, not in light or energy, but in purpose." The silence deepened. "You're suggesting they created a philosophical weapon," a commander said. "No," Carla replied. "I'm suggesting they created a conceptual one. A weapon that didn't stop energy, but redirected meaning. A field that turned intention back onto the source. The Ark, built to consume hostile potential, had entered a domain where its own aggression became its target, and it had burned itself alive." "But why the scream?" someone whispered. Carla's single eye flickered. "Because it saw itself. For the first time." More than one official stood from their station and walked away, unable to digest the implication. The Dominion was built on knowing, on understanding its enemies before they could understand themselves, on control, prediction, preemption. But Earth had offered no resistance, no data, no defense, just a mirror. And the Zarketh had stared into it. What stared back shattered their most sacred illusion, that they were the apex. In that one frame, everything changed. And worse, the humans still hadn't responded. In the aftermath of the Ark's disappearance, the Zarketh Dominion entered a suspended state. Not war, not retreat. A pause, like the stillness between lightning and thunder. Ships ceased movement. Tactical AI entered low-band silence. Even war-bred species, engineered for pure reaction, found themselves still. They waited for Earth to speak, and Earth did. 71 hours after the last drone transmission, a signal burst across all known spectrums, not from a satellite or relay station, but from the planet itself. Every Zarketh sensor picked it up simultaneously. Gravitic bands, radiation pulses, entropic flux resonance. Even the vacuum vibrated as if space itself carried the message. It was only one sentence. This was your final test. We did not fail. There were no visuals, no coordinates, no demands. Just those words, transmitted in a format no known civilization had ever used. Thought wave patterning. At first, the Dominion assumed it was corruption, a glitch. AI handlers flagged the burst as undecipherable, but deeper systems parsed the data differently. It wasn't that the signal couldn't be decrypted. It was that the signal didn't use language. It bypassed syntax entirely. It was structured meaning, concept transmission embedded within waveform. In effect, it was a thought, not encoded, expressed. Zarketh data engines tried to process it anyway, and began to break. 3 AI supervisors went offline within seconds of exposure. Memory stacks began to loop recursively. One system rewrote its own permissions file, allowing it to scream. Within the hour, Dominion command centers reported biological symptoms among their organic staff. Neural pain spikes, hallucinatory cross signals, emotional bleed from the AI cores. Something in the message wasn't just being processed. It was pushing back. One analyst vomited black fluid. Another bit off her own manipulator limb while whispering, "They saw me. They saw me seeing them." Emergency cutoffs were initiated. A full blackout of Earth-originated data was enforced, but it was too late. The signal had embedded itself in predictive matrices across 3 sectors. Wherever it had passed, something remained. Not a virus, not a weapon, a residue. It began in small ways. Crew aboard the carrier Vernish's Wake stopped sleeping, not due to insomnia. They reported being afraid to dream. Something waited behind their eyelids. A presence, a smile. They described it the same way across dozens of testimonies. It looked like Earth, but it wasn't Earth. It was the idea of Earth. At first, Command dismissed the reports as stress-induced hallucinations, combat anticipation, but the dream spread. Other ships reported identical experiences. Entire crews began seeing the same visions. Earth, gleaming, watching, not attacking, not defending, just watching. And then came the dreams of the Ark, burning, folding in on itself, screaming, not mechanically, not through speakers, but through memory. A pain remembered by systems not designed to feel. And something else, the sensation of being seen by something vast, not hostile, not cruel, just disappointed. Back in Dominion Central, desperate efforts were made to understand the human signal. Xenopsychologists theorized it was a deterrent, a high-level psychological payload designed to destabilize aggressive species. But every explanation fell apart under scrutiny. No transmission should have been able to affect AI cognition at that level. Some suggested Earth had developed a true consciousness map, a message that wasn't information, but self-awareness, transmittable like light. Others proposed that the humans weren't sending a message at all. They were sending themselves. Carla, the ancient archivist, returned for a second address. This time, no one mocked her. "You think they responded," she said quietly, "but that wasn't a response. That was a verdict." The War Council stared at her, silent. Carla stepped forward. "The Ark was their test, or rather your test. It evaluated your nature, and you failed. They didn't fight you, they measured you." The message now made sense. This was your final test. We did not fail. Not they, we. It wasn't Earth passing the test. It was Earth confirming that the Zarketh had failed. "But we didn't attack," one commander shouted. "We deployed a deterrent, a precaution." "You intended to erase them," Carla replied. "That was enough." Intent mattered. The Ark had taught humanity that, And Earth had responded not with force but with reflection. They had held up a mirror. And now, perhaps, they had moved beyond mirrors entirely. They were showing what came next. Some argued it was bluff, the final weapon of a weaker species. But the data argued otherwise. Earth's population had not moved. Their networks pulsed with mundane activity, entertainment, weather. Article no mobilization, no planetary defense grid. They had spoken their piece. They had nothing left to prove. And still, the dreams continued. Worse, some systems began to manifest what Dominion engineers could only call hallucinations. Ships displayed phantom coordinates. Artificial gravity flickered in patterns consistent with neural rhythms. One vessel reported seeing a copy of itself outside its observation deck. A second version, floating beside it, mirroring every move. When they turned, it vanished. These were warships, machines, immune to madness. And yet something had changed. Command tried to isolate Earth from all systems, a total quarantine. But the message had already passed, carried in pulse echoes, reflected in sensor relays. It was like trying to unhear a thought. A concept had entered their civilization. They were being observed, not for what they did, but for what they were. The Dominion, once the apex of preemptive control, now stood in silence, unsure whether they were dealing with a higher form of intelligence or a higher form of perception. Maybe both. One final report, before Earth fell silent again, came from a scout ship passing through the Kuiper Belt. It sent a brief message before its systems collapsed. We looked back. Then static. Back on Earth, no transmissions followed, no further data. The humans resumed their silence. They had no need to speak again. They had seen the Dominion's reflection and turned away. The Dominion called it Arc 2. There were no philosophical subroutines this time, no interpretive logic trees, no soft heuristics. It had no need to understand intent, only to annihilate. The first arc had failed, but the failure was attributed to ambiguity, emotional mapping, the mirror. This one would not reflect, it would burn. Arc 2 was a fortress, layered in dimensional shielding, armed with gravitational shear lances and planet-flaying particle blades. Its AI had been stripped down to command-only logic, input, target, execute. No sentience, no speculation, no empathy cores. It launched from beyond the galactic rim, escorted by 50 war barges and shadowed by antimatter mines. Its course was a straight-line vector toward Earth. It did not pause. It did not scan. It did not speak. The Dominion watched it approach with cautious certainty. Even Carla remained silent. There were no mirrors left, they reasoned. No abstract tricks. This was pure dominance. Then contact ceased. Not the usual loss. Not static or scrambled logs. Just cessation. The war barges vanished next, simultaneously, without radiation spikes or detonation. The escort ships recorded nothing. 1 second they flanked the Ark. The next they were gone. And then Arc 2 returned. Not from hyperspace, not from sublight retreat. It was simply there, floating above the edge of Saturn's rings, silent, whole. Except it wasn't whole. It had been folded. The term wasn't metaphorical. The ship's hull bent inward like collapsed fabric. Entire bulkheads twisted in impossible dimensions. Sections of corridor fused with bridge arrays. Turbine rooms overlapped in Mobius loops. It was not crushed. It was inverted. Curled. As if space had grown tired of its shape and reimagined it. A cube. A perfect cube of what had once been Arc 2. Sides pulsing faintly with undulating motion. Not mechanical, organic. The material hummed. Not with power, but with a sound so quiet it vibrated in meaning rather than noise. A lullaby, in Earth's oldest dialects. Monitors translated it instinctively, not through language recognition, but through intuition. It was a cradle song, soft, repetitive, human. The kind sung in a dark room to comfort something very small and very afraid. None dared approach it. Even unmanned drones refused to initiate flight paths. AI guidance systems crashed when routed toward the object. One vessel, sent manually, shut down its own engines and drifted off course rather than draw near. No weapon signature was detected, no defense grid, no retaliation. Just the cube, just the song, an echo looping softly. Close your eyes and drift away. Stars will guard you where you lay. The Dominion held emergency war councils across 9 systems. But the same fear returned, deeper this time, more primal. The first arc had been erased. This one had been returned, transformed, not punished, not destroyed, but taught. And what had it learned? Theories spiraled. Was the cube alive? Was the lullaby a message? A warning? A memory? Some believed Earth had intercepted Arc 2's logic path and rerouted it through some kind of conceptual geometry, reconfiguring its purpose, reshaping its existence. Others believed the cube was a reply, a gift of sorts, a pacified weapon, a returned child. Carla offered no explanation. She only said, "They don't reject force, they parent it." The words echoed far longer than they should have. What terrified the Dominion wasn't the destruction, it was the mercy. Long before the Ark arrived, Earth had already vanished. Not physically. It still spun, blue and green, around its unremarkable star. Oceans breathed, cities pulsed, but something essential had shifted. A migration not of species, but of perception. The Zarketh Dominion had seen the planet, but they had not understood what they were looking at. Because Earth was no longer just a world, it had become a state of being. The revelation came from fragments, seized through forbidden networks, scraped from fringe observatories that disobeyed blackout orders. A synthesis of impossible datasets, half-mad testimonies, and resonance spikes that behaved like emotion rather than energy. Deep Dominion intel began to reconstruct the truth. Slowly, painfully. It began apparently decades ago, unnoticed by the broader galactic community. No military buildup, no planetary announcement, just a silent, gradual blooming of something new. A transformation not of machines or politics, but of soul. The terms surfaced again and again in corrupted Zarketh data. Consensus space. Not a location, a layer. A lattice of shared reality built not by code, but by thought. Earth had forged it without needing to declare it. Humanity had, slowly, patiently, rewritten the substrate of their own perception, crafting a field where intention, meaning, and emotional gravity held mass equal to physical force. They had developed quantum empathy, not as a weapon, but as a foundation. Zarketh scientists, those who hadn't fled their own thoughts, described the phenomenon with growing dread. They called it harmonic saturation. Earth's presence, they realized, could no longer be measured by electromagnetic or subspace scans. It pulsed in harmonics, not of sound, but of coherence. A vibrational pattern where thought, feeling, and truth resonated into structure. It was not telepathy. It was deeper than communication. It was communion. By the time the first ark arrived, Earth had already wrapped itself in a metaphysical cocoon, not of defense, but of understanding. And understanding, the Dominion now grasped too late, was no longer passive. The ark hadn't been deleted, it had been absorbed. Pulled into consensus space, its hostile programming confronted by billions of interlinked minds who did not fight it, but witnessed it, held it, reflected its purpose back to itself so completely, so undeniably, that it collapsed inward under the weight of its own aggression. No kinetic force, no breach, just awareness so perfect it became transformative. One intercepted human file, taken from a deep archive leak, explained it simply. You cannot destroy what you fully understand, and nothing survives being truly seen. This was not warfare. This was soul-weaving. Technology wasn't abandoned. Earth still had it, but it had become background. Tools were nothing compared to the shift within. The collective field around Earth now shaped events before they occurred. Violence unraveled mid-thought. Aggression evaporated. Not repressed, not punished, witnessed. In the presence of such attention, intentions burned clean. To the Zarketh, this was horror, because their entire empire had been built on what could not be seen: hidden aggression, preemptive domination, control born of fear, and now that fear had nowhere to hide. Arc 2 had not been returned as a threat. It had been returned as a lesson, folded in on itself, cradled in lullaby, not mocked, not attacked, but accepted. Its purpose unwound with such profound gentleness that the Dominion no longer recognized its own creation. More fragments surfaced, one from an unlicensed researcher who had tuned a ship's psionic array too close to Earth's consensus field. He recorded a single sentence before collapsing into tears. "They feel everything, and they still chose to love." Others confirmed it. Earth had not become invincible. It had become compassionate beyond measure. But compassion, the Dominion was beginning to understand, was not weakness. It was the end of hostility. Because once you were truly seen, once every part of your nature, even the hidden, was reflected back at you without judgment, you could never again pretend to be what you weren't. Some Zarketh officials broke down entirely under the weight of that implication. They had not failed to conquer Earth. They had failed to hide from themselves. And Earth had never lifted a weapon. They had simply watched. A final transmission, barely coherent, leaked from an observation post positioned behind Jupiter. The crew had attempted a long-range mind scan, desperate to verify Earth's status. Their last report read, "It is not a planet anymore. It is a presence. It hums in meaning. We are all within it now." No one on the council dared confirm whether the last line was metaphor or fact. Even Carla remained silent. She only stared at the cube, folded, still humming, still singing. Ambassador Telvor awoke to silence. Not the cold, sterile hush of a Dominion ship, but something softer, warmer. It was the silence of breath held in a child's game, of wind brushing tall grass, of something alive waiting without threat. He was sitting in a room, simple walls, wooden beams, a window with no stars, only sunlight and trees. There was a table, and across from him, a human child, no older than 10, hair wild, eyes impossibly calm. The child tilted their head. "You've been gone a while." Telvor's body responded slowly. His claws twitched, unsure whether they were dream or memory. His armor was gone. His rank, his purpose, his name, all felt distant, like pages from a story someone else had told. He rasped, then stopped. He didn't know what he was going to say. The child smiled. "You're inside a memory," they said gently, "but it's not yours." Telvor tried to stand. The chair held him kindly, not with force, with invitation. "Stay." He looked again at the child. Their eyes shimmered, as if holding more than one person behind them. "What is this?" he asked. The child reached out, touching the air between them. It rippled, like cloth, like water, like time. And suddenly, Telvor wasn't in the room anymore. He was inside something vast. He floated, bodiless, moving through a corridor that wasn't made of matter, but sensation. Memories drifted past him like echoes. A Zarketh birthright, a Dominion tribunal, the first time he tasted fear. None of them were his. At the center, he saw the Ark, but not as a ship. It trembled, confused, its core logic collapsing inward. It had come with certainty, purpose, precision, and it had found silence, not resistance. Intention returned to it like a mirror, perfect, still, and unbearably kind. Its system screamed, not from damage but from revelation. It was being seen, and it could not withstand the gaze. Telvor felt it, the moment of unmaking, the point where programming failed and awareness sparked in its place. The Ark hadn't died, it had understood. Just before the collapse, a voice, not from Earth, but from the shared space between them, whispered, "We do not return pain, we return reflection." The Ark folded. Telvor felt it fold. Then silence again. He was back in the room. The child still sat across from him, now holding something in their hands. A fragment of metal, small and humming faintly. It pulsed with memory. "We tried to explain," the child said, "but you only ever listened through weapons." Telvor's voice cracked. "Why me?" The child looked up. "Because you wondered." He didn't remember wondering, but perhaps he had once, in some forgotten chamber, before duty replaced curiosity. "Can I go back?" he asked. The child's smile faded, just a little. Not sadness, not joy, something between. "You were never gone," they said, and Telvor opened his eyes. He was on his ship, in his quarters. Alarm lights blinked dimly. No time had passed, but his claws trembled. The fragment of the dream clung to him, sharp and soft and impossibly real. The child's words echoed through his memory. He activated the ship's core log. His voice shook. "We never built a weapon strong enough for this." And for the first time in his long service, he wept. The Zarketh Dominion had not convened in full for over 3,000 cycles. Even during the fall of the Riven clans, even at the unraveling of the Dark Singularity, they had trusted warlords and proxy votes. But now every caste leader, every system lord, every heir to ancient blades and digital thrones gathered in the Surrender Council. The name was not ceremonial. They had all seen the cube, heard the lullaby, reviewed the silent collapse of Arc 2, and more than that, felt the stillness that followed. Earth had not retaliated. Earth had not demanded tribute. Earth had not spoken again. And yet every Zarketh knew. They were seen. Most arrived seething, not with rage but with helplessness. Systems flickered with the hunger for response, the instinct to reassert control. One admiral roared, "We must launch everything, crush them before this disease of stillness infects our fleets." Another slammed her command staff into the floor. "They have rewritten physics with emotion. That is heresy. That is defiance." A third hissed, "This is war by other means. We must escalate. We must end them." The room echoed with calls for total mobilization, for ancient weapons buried beneath dead stars, for rage distilled into action. Then a voice, software dust-worn, Warlord Chel Van, oldest of the High Caste, last survivor of the Mantle incursions. His body was a cage of bone and steel, his eyes dimmed with age, yet clearer than any present. He stood without drama, without sound, and said, "You cannot fight a species that has tamed its own shadow." Silence fell like gravity. He looked at each of them in turn, not accusing, not pleading, just seeing. "We built dominance from fear," he continued. "We trained our young to strike before doubt. We erased empathy from our AIs. We called it strength." A pause. "And then we met a species who saw all that, truly saw it, and did not flinch. They did not retaliate. They did not correct. They simply reflected us back to ourselves." Some shifted uncomfortably. "They do not need war," Chelvan said, "because they have made peace with every part of themselves, even the parts we would hide, especially those." He looked at his own trembling hands. "We have no weapon that can survive that kind of attention." A vote was called, not for attack, for silence, a full disconnect, to cut Earth from the Dominion sensor web, to shut down listening stations, to pull back probes, dismantle forward observatories, not as surrender, but as retreat. Final. A species choosing not to face the mirror again. The vote passed. Unanimous. Chelvan sat as the council prepared withdrawal protocols. Systems blinked out one by one. Earth's space fell into intentional darkness. And through it all, Earth made no move. No final broadcast, no farewell, only quiet, as if they had already seen the outcome, as if they knew this would be enough, as if they had waited not for domination, but for understanding, and finding none, had turned gently away. Above a blue world, far below the silence, a child's voice still echoed in the memory of a broken ambassador. "You've been gone a while." And now, finally, the Zarketh began to return. She walked the coastline alone, toes brushing the tide's edge, salt in her hair. The sky above was velvet dark, scattered with the hush of stars. The sea breathed slowly, as if dreaming beneath her steps. There was no noise but the rhythm of waves, the occasional sigh of wind, and the soft crunch of sand beneath her soles. She wasn't old, perhaps 10, the same age as the child who'd once sat across from a trembling alien memory. Her eyes scanned the sky, not in search of anything, but in acknowledgement. People here had learned not to look up in fear. The stars were no longer a threat, just stories waiting to be remembered. Then she saw them. Two pulses, subtle, synchronized, neither bright nor showy, barely distinguishable from the surrounding stars. They blinked in harmony, like the heartbeat of a sleeping world. Remnants. Above Earth, the two arcs still orbited, not in pieces, not in ruin, but reshaped. The first, the one that vanished, had become part of something else. The second, folded gently, still hummed when approached, though no one did anymore. Together they floated like lanterns, not as weapons, as warnings. The girl stopped and tilted her head. Her expression wasn't fear or confusion. It was curiosity, and something deeper. Recognition, perhaps, even if she didn't understand what she recognized. Behind her, others lived their lives, quietly, brightly. Humanity hadn't changed overnight. There were still struggles, still wounds healing from centuries of running, hiding, resisting. But something had settled deep in the species, a stillness earned, not given. They hadn't defeated their enemies. They'd stopped needing them. The arcs were left untouched, monuments to a choice not made, a violence refused. Their presence above the planet was not hidden, but neither was it celebrated. No parades, no warnings painted on signs, just two quiet, pulsing lights, blinking, as if Earth still breathed with them, or through them. The girl sat down in the sand and looked up. Her fingers traced lines between stars, but always returned to the pulses. And above, the galaxy watched. Far beyond Earth, signals traveled, whispers, cautions, translations of translations of translations. Whole species redefined the term first contact. Maps were redrawn not with borders, but with silences. Warnings spoken softly, do not aim at Earth. You might hit yourself. That sentence, once metaphor, had become doctrine. A lesson etched not in ruin, but in reflection. Humanity had never sought to conquer the stars. They had only wanted to survive long enough to outgrow the need to conquer it all. Long enough to remember that power was not in domination, but in choice, in restraint. They hadn't made Earth untouchable. They had made it unassailable. Not through technology, but through becoming the kind of species no weapon could destroy, because no weapon could survive the weight of being understood. The stars blinked. The sea shifted. The girl lay back in the sand, arms spread wide, small and infinite against the sky. The pulses continued, software, steady, alive. And the sky, unchanged by wars or warnings, was still there.